Hello and welcome to In the Cosmos from the De Anza College Planetarium. As always, I'm Toshi Komatsu, your host and the director of the planetarium. And this is the finale of our multi-part series all about the reason for the seasons. Now, in our last two videos, we've been talking about how Earth's elliptical orbit is actually not the reason for the seasons. We learned that Earth is actually closer to the sun in northern hemisphere winter, and it's actually further away in the summertime. We also talked about how the lengths of days change throughout the year, having shorter days during the winter and longer days during the summer. Now, the reason for both of these phenomena is actually the Earth's tilt. So let's look a little bit more closely at this phenomena. Now, here I have a model of the sun, which is just going to be a light here. I also have a model of Earth, which I'm going to be using as a ball on a stick. And we know that Earth is something that orbits around the sun, and it does so once a year. But it's a little more complicated than this because Earth, as it orbits around, it doesn't do so with the axis pointing straight up and down. It's actually tilted a little bit, about 23.5 degrees off of vertical. And it's always pointing at the North Star. And the key thing to remember is that it's always pointing at the North Star no matter where it is in its orbit. For example, in the summertime, with the North Pole pointing towards the North Star, Earth is also tilted towards the sun. But 6 months later, Earth has moved to the other side of its orbit, and even though the North Pole is still pointing towards the North Star, the tilt is no longer towards the sun, but away from the sun. Now, in the fall and in the spring, you get the in-between situation, and the North Pole is not really pointed towards the sun or away from the sun. Again, it's in between. Well, let's look at the same thing, but from space using our digital sky software. Here we show Earth on June 21st on the June solstice with the poles and the equator marked here. Now again, the North Pole is tilted towards the North Star. It's always pointing at the North Star. And on this date, it's also pointing in the direction of the sun here. And you can see how Earth is illuminated here. There's more of the northern hemisphere illuminated. So someone standing or someone positioned in the northern hemisphere would see the sun at a high angle, and you get more sunlight shining directly on the planet. And that makes it warmer for the summer. You get the opposite in the southern hemisphere, and you may have heard that the seasons are reversed in the northern and the southern hemispheres, and this is why. Again, it has to do with the tilt. Now, 6 months later in December, Earth is going to move halfway around its orbit here. So as we back away from Earth here, we see where it is over on the left of our view here, and it's going to move around and go to the other side of its orbit over on the right side. Now, as we zoom back in on Earth, we'll notice that again, the North Pole is still going to be pointed towards the North Star. Remember, that doesn't change. But as we look at the way Earth is illuminated, now we've got the sun on the other side. We take a look and we see less of the northern hemisphere is illuminated. More of the southern hemisphere is illuminated. But from the northern hemisphere, the sun would appear to be at a low angle. The sunlight is going to be spread out across the northern hemisphere, and that'll make it cooler as winter. So, there you have it. The reason for the seasons is actually all to do with the tilt of the Earth. And even though it might make intuitive sense that, again, elliptical orbit, that must mean that sometimes Earth is closer to the sun, sometimes it's further away. When it's closer, it should be warmer, and that's why we have summer. But the reality is a little more tricky. It's a little more complicated. And that's why we have science, and so that we're able to tell the difference between what just kind of seems true and what is actually true. Well, that's it for this video and this series all about the reason for the seasons. If you like this mini-series format, go ahead and leave a comment below. Let us know. We might be able to do a few more of these in the future. But for now, if you enjoyed the video, if you learned a little something, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share the video with everyone that you know. Also, be sure to check out all of our social media where we share observational tips and astronomy news just for you. Until next time, thank you as always for checking in. We really appreciate it. And here's wishing you clear, dark skies. And for now, this is the De Anza College Planetarium signing off.